If you'd like to grab some seats, we'll get started with the formal presentation. My name is Joe Janier. I'll be acting as the moderator for this. There will be questions or sheets handed out, and if you can write your questions, Mr. Bob Bates over there, a former retired English teacher from East Rochester, said he can read. So,
Yay for English teachers.
Yes. And he was a former football coach and a player that played with a helmet on many years ago. Before we get his program, I'd like to give you a little background on our agenda and what we'll do. Terry here will do a presentation along with the board regarding what's going to take place at the future plans for the library system here. After that, we'll open it up for questions, but the questions will be given to Mr. Bates, and Mr. Bates will read them and the board will answer. We have some backup questions, but make sure you write those out. What I'd like to do now, we'll turn it over to Terry and Stephanie. They'll tell you the plan about it, and I guess they're going to double team with across the way and give you a presentation on what's taking place. Okay? Terry?
Thank you, Joe. Joe's been doing an awesome job as our moderator at all of these. Okay, in case you've been on vacation, we're here tonight to talk about building a new public library for Irondequoit right here on the Town Hall campus. We're talking about right out here. 2 or 3 story building up to 60,000 square feet that complements our beautiful town hall and includes larger spaces for all of the library's operations. Library programs, space for programs and meeting space for community groups, other town departments that need larger spaces for programs, and hopefully a revenue producing operation such as a coffee shop that might also help us defray the cost of the project. We feel that this is the time to get this done. The last time Irondequoit did anything to improve their libraries was 1985. And in 1985, high-tech office equipment was an electric typewriter. And things have really changed since then. And our buildings have not kept up, and we are suffering because of it. Our biggest problem is lack of space for library facilities and operations, both for the public and for the staff. And we think it's a pretty dramatic problem, and we'll be illustrating it for you tonight. Now, we've made some cosmetic improvements over the years. Just a couple years ago, we replaced some carpet and did some other improvements, and some local merchants generously helped us get that done. And the buildings look nicer, but they didn't get any bigger. And bigger is what we need. And so renovations, although they would make the buildings more pleasant to work in and to visit, they aren't going to solve the problems that we have, the infrastructure and space problems that we have. This lack of space really affects us in a lot of different ways. For the public, people struggle finding a place to sit down, finding a place to spread out their work. If they manage to get to sit in front of a computer, they only get 45 minutes because they're in such short supply. And even if they do manage to get a computer for 45 minutes, there's barely enough elbow room to use it, let alone spread out your books and papers and actually get some work done. There isn't enough space for children and teens to use the library in a way that allows them to be natural without annoying everyone else in sight, or I should say within earshot. And it's frustrating for everyone, and it's frustrating for the staff as well. The staff areas also are terribly undersized. You know, we have situations where people's desks and the break room table where they eat lunch and the restrooms are just a few feet apart, and as you can imagine, that's not terribly pleasant.
Before we leave this slide, something I want to clarify or expand on. The $44 per year that you see here that we spend on upkeep, that's just on, that's not regular maintenance. That's on things like our HVAC systems that keep going, our roofing issues that we've had problems with. Just last month, this year alone, we had an HVAC system at McGraw go, and because it was so old, there were no parts to repair it, so we had to spend we just recently spent $8,000 to replace it. So the $44,000 are things that are on top of the regular maintenance, maintaining the interior of the branches. And something else I want to stress, that the last renovation was in 1985, and Helen McGraw was actually quoted, the director at the time, was quoted as saying that the renovation then was already inadequate. So what we're trying to do with our proposal is not repeat the historical mistakes that we've made back then, and making sure that we plan not only for now, what we need now and what we needed back then, but what we're going to need going into the future. So future generations and future boards aren't faced with the same crippling issues that we're faced with for lack of space and not knowing what to do next to make it right.
So here's some graphical representations of what we're talking about. You're looking at a chart that lists the major libraries in the Monroe County Library System, and up the left-hand column, the left-hand side, are the number of years since they either built a new library or renovated their existing library. Gates and Greece have no column because Gates built a new library within the last year, and Greece just remodeled a major portion of their library. As you can see, we're leading the league in this category, and it's not a good thing to be leading the league in. And we're way out ahead of everybody else. It's been almost 30 years since we've done anything to improve the libraries. So it's about time. In conjunction with that, if you look at this chart, here are the major towns in the library system again, with the populations that they serve at the bottom. And again, the upper left-hand side is the axis that shows the number of square feet that library has. The Irondequoit number is actually slightly misleading because we don't really have a 24,000 square foot library. We have two 12,000 square foot libraries. And in each one of those 12,000 square foot libraries, we're trying to do what Greece is doing with 38,000 square feet and what Webster's trying to do with 43,000 square feet. Pretty frustrating. In addition, occasionally people say, gosh, why these extra meeting rooms and things like that? Well, not only does Greece have a 38,000 square foot library, but right across the parking lot they have a community center. And Webster not only has a 43,000 square foot library, but in another part of town they have a brand new recreation center with flexible meeting room space there. So it seems pretty logical that if we had the opportunity to build a new building for the library, we'd want to add a little extra space to try to get some of that flexible meeting room space that our community groups and town departments could use. Thank you, this really helps. Occasionally people say to us, okay, maybe you do need a new library, but what's the rush? We've been looking, I shouldn't say we, the town, our residents, our government, our leaders have been looking at this situation for a long time. As you can see, a series of studies, plans, strategic plans, town facilities plans have been conducted since 1998, almost annually, but not quite. Some conducted by the town government, some conducted by the library, some by the library system, some by the town and library together. Right up until the last few years when the library did the Thomas Group study of our building options, and Barkstrom and LaCroix did the analysis of the Kings Park Center. And then just this past year, we had Passero Associates update the study from the Thomas Group so that the numbers would be very current. So we've got 3 pages of a list of studies and strategic plans that were done, and all of these things have one thing in common. I usually say at this point, does anybody know what that one thing is? Someone just said the right answer out there. Nothing happened. So we say it's time for something to happen, and that's why we're here tonight. So why the Town Hall campus? We say the Town Hall campus is the central location. When I started working here 9 years ago, we were in the midst of one of those studies, and there was some controversy about what would be a reasonable place to build a new library, and I believe the library board actually wrote a letter and sent it to the Post, and it said, we're in favor of a central library, and we're going to find the most central location possible. We think we have it. There's a number of advantages to being on the Town Hall campus. We don't have to purchase land in order to erect a new building. We won't be purchasing land and removing it from the property tax rolls. This location here on Titus Avenue can safely be reached on foot or on bicycle. And we are dedicated to making sure that there's enough parking and that all traffic problems are solved and that there's still enough room on campus for the festivals that we all love to attend. The town is in the midst of recreating how the Town Hall campus is used and studying the traffic flow and adding another parking lot north of the DPW building to free up the parking that's around the Town Hall and near where the new library will be. And we are dedicated to making sure that there will be plentiful parking for everyone. And nobody loves the 4th of July better than we do. And so we are dedicated to making sure that that festival can still happen here on campus. So, in order to avoid paying millions of dollars in architectural fees for a building that hadn't been, that we weren't sure was going to be built, we asked a couple local architectural firms to create some drawings, some concepts of what could take place here on the Town Hall campus. This first drawing that you're looking at is from Passereau Associates, and it is for a building that would go right out here, and as you can see, they've got some ideas for parking that include widening that part of Columbus Way and adding head-in parking there, and then also adding more parking to the parking area between the DPW building to the north and the far side of the library building that you're looking at. Now, when you came in, you saw these same drawings on some posters, and if you want, you can get a much closer look when you take a look when you leave. Another firm, Barkstrom and LaCroix, submitted this drawing to us. It's for a slightly different concept. It's for a building where the floors aren't all equal size, a little more spread out. One of the things that we discuss constantly is what style of building would be best for a new library. Getting as much of the public library operations as we can onto the first floor makes for easier administration and monitoring of the activities in the library, holds down the number of staff that you need to operate the library, but it is a slightly larger footprint. So, you know, it's something that we're examining closely. As you can see, their concept has a link between the two buildings, a nice courtyard, and most of the additional parking is between the DPW building and that far side of the new library building. But remember, we'll be adding another parking lot to the north of the DPW building, if you're familiar with this property where the Keeble House used to be.
Yeah, could I just interject here, please?
And Mary Joyce has been involved in this, and she knows what's better than any of us what's going on with that.
Yes. First, I have always been concerned about the flow of traffic, and what we initiated this year is that we are now having all employees be parking over here, so we always have room to offer our customer service and one-way traffic following through. When we talk about the Keeble property, we're not talking about where the ball fields are going to be. Yes, those ball fields are going to be built, and we have some interesting proposals from people about how we are able to do those ball fields. When we refer to the Keeble property, we're talking about where the house was. That space that's by the new cold storage facility is where we are moving the DPW workers who park over in this area to park over closer to the facility. So when we talk about a parking lot there, that's just for the DPW employees, just where that Keeble house was located. Keep in mind, these are all renderings, and we're showing trees just placed. And I had someone contact me about the horseshoe pits. I said, positively, we're not moving those. They're beautiful in those trees, you know, especially with a tree hugger such as myself. You don't touch trees. But what people need to understand, there are some trees that we are trying to eliminate in Irondequoit, and some of those happen to be on our campus. And those are the Norway maples. They are invasive species. In terms of the trees that are valuable, obviously, we're going to preserve those. Interestingly, when Broderick built this town hall, this was the town court. He didn't know back, I think it was about 92 or 93, that they had to build the public safety building because there wasn't enough room in the town hall. They had outgrown the town hall and needed to provide that space over there. So space has always been a factor for us. You have to keep in mind, we're 52,000 residents in 15 square miles. We're densely populated. Thank you, Terry.
Anytime. No matter what the building looks like when we're finished designing it, it will have been designed with a lot of public input from people like you, but also after thinking all these things over and trying to get the best of all possible worlds from it. But no matter which building gets built, there will be plenty of this meeting space that's so desperately needed. Every community group we visit, when we mention the meeting space, they start nodding. This is a drawing that we've grown to love. One of our trustees, Jack Harima, found this drawing on the wall in an office in the basement. It's the 1948 drawing of this building that we're in right now, before it was even built. And yes, Tom Broderick, Supervisor Broderick, the person this room is named after, this was his concept for what the town hall campus should look like. And strangely enough, just to the right of the town hall, a library, right where we want to build it now. So very quickly, a map of the town that you all will recognize. That pink dot right in the middle is where the town hall campus is, and there's a couple green dots out that I'm going to point to because I'm not sure you can see them, and that's where the two branches are.
I could have done that. Yeah. And those two green dots that represent our branches, those are less than 3 miles apart. They're about 2.6 miles apart.
The head of our town planning department, Larry Heiniger, took the time to pull out the map of Monroe County, plot the location of every library in that town, in every library in the library system, and then measured the farthest point in that town from that library. And he discovered that if we build a library right here on the town hall campus, no person in town will be more than 3.7 miles from the library. Most of the other towns in the county, that number is like 5 or 6 or 7 miles away. So talk about central. It would be the most central library in the county. So how's the library going to get better if we do this? Well, it's sort of interesting the way libraries work. Libraries evolve and change to meet the needs of the community. So it wasn't all that long ago. Well, the library's dead. The internet's here. Didn't happen. And now it's, the library's going to die. You know, e-books are going to take over. Well, e-books have taken over, and if you want them for free, you got to get them from the library. And every time we teach a class to people on how to do that, it's packed. They could be bigger if we had a bigger meeting room. But the library's evolving in other ways, too. We used to think of them as these big storehouses full of books, and you would come in and you would choose your books and you would leave. And it's not that way anymore. Libraries have become the centers of communities, a community's living room, a former supervisor said to me once. And so people come to us for a lot of things that you wouldn't have thought about the library, say, 20 years ago. Like help in finding a job, because all job searching is now online and all job applications are now online. And we teach classes on how to do that, or how to improve your resume, or how to win your job interview. We weren't doing that 10 years ago. We do it all the time now. The library evolves to meet the needs of the community. That's best done with a flexible space that makes it easy for us to meet those needs. Among the other things that could be included in a new library are things like, as I said before, separate areas for children and for teenagers so that they can enjoy the library their way and not disturb the adults. Quiet study areas for people who want that traditional library setting where they can concentrate and not be disturbed. Much more seating and many more computers and the space to use them effectively instead of playing the airline elbow game with the person next to you. And of course, the community meeting rooms where the library can use them for teaching classes and conducting programs, and so can other town departments and the other community groups. And my favorite, modern and accessible restrooms, which we do not have now. The restrooms in our libraries are abysmal, and they are so small that we can't put the baby changing stations in that have become ubiquitous in public restrooms in this country because they're too small. If we put a baby changing station in, you can't open the door. So as I was saying, libraries aren't going away, and recent research shows this. Just last month, like I said, it would be 2 months ago now, January 2013, the Pew Research Group, which is a nationally renowned public opinion company, queried people around the country, and even people who identified themselves as never using the library. And 80% of them said that borrowing books from the library was still a very important service to them, and that getting the questions answered by reference librarians were still very important to them. I mean, traditional old school library type activities. And that the top reason why they visited the library was still to borrow materials. Their second highest reason for visiting the library was internet or using their own devices on the library's Wi-Fi. And 60% of young people said they still visit the library regularly. And 77% said that free access to the library's computers and the internet was a very important library service. It does not sound like a dying organization to me. Libraries have always had an important connection to the town's business community as well. Another recent study by the Texas Department of Education found that for every dollar that the state of Texas invested in their public libraries, they received $4.42 back in measurable economic benefit. Measurable economic benefit are things like what it would cost to buy those materials that were borrowed for free, or what it would cost to buy those materials that they could freely use inside the library, or what it would cost to buy computers and broadband internet access instead of getting it for free at the library, and getting access to extremely expensive online databases that most of us could not afford. These are measurable economic benefits that are returned by the library. Now, they did not include anything that they didn't feel they could put a solid number on, but there are other economic benefits that the library delivers. Helping, as I mentioned earlier, helping people who are unemployed find jobs. I mean, this is daily activity in our libraries right now. Helping small businesses or people who want to start their own businesses. Something, again, we do pretty regularly. Another huge economic benefit of libraries is that they keep people in town instead of leaving town to spend their money somewhere else. I'm going to skip this slide and go to this one, and then go back. Some very perceptive woman wrote this letter to the Irondequoit Post in February. One day last year I realized I was driving to other towns and taking my disposable cash with me, stopping at Hagedorn's and not Harrima's, getting my caffeine fix at Orient's instead of Sips, because I needed to visit a quality library, and my local branches weren't getting it done. And that is so true. How much is gas now? Like $3.80 something a gallon? Does anyone leave their house to do one thing anymore? Not me. So if I'm going to go to a library in another town, chances are I'm going to drop off my dry cleaning in that other town. I'm going to buy my liquor in another liquor store in another town. And all those things that we do when we try to batch those trips together to save gas. It sounds trivial, but when 52,000 people are doing that, that's a lot of lost economic benefit.
Mary Jo, did you want to expand on that, Mary Jo? No?
No, there's some other things.
And then there's the sales tax revenue. Your local government receives a fairly large chunk of its revenue that helps it operate from sales tax revenue that they share with the county and the state. And so when that money is being spent in other towns, that revenue goes down. And then when our town departments meet with the supervisor to talk about their budget, it's bad news. We need to keep that sales tax money and that local spending right here in Irondequoit. Yep. And our Chamber of Commerce certainly recognizes this. They recently voted to endorse this concept of a new library, and here is their statement. The Irondequoit Chamber of Commerce recognizes a 21st century central library will offer the types of valued services and amenities that attracts home buyers, retains homeowners, and keeps the business and spending power of residents in the Irondequoit community. For the good of our merchants and the good of our residents, the Irondequoit Chamber of Commerce endorses this long overdue plan to improve our town with a new central library. That's a well-written statement. So, of course, the residents of this town will decide whether this is a good plan or not. So on April 23rd, there will be a vote on a referendum, and there will be 2 polling locations. In the East Irondequoit School District, residents who live in the East Irondequoit School District will vote at the Ridge Culver Fire Department. West Irondequoit School District residents will vote at the St. Paul Fire Department on Cooper Road. The hours will be from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Absentee ballots will be available at the town hall. I was checking on that today. The ballots have not been printed yet, so if you stop by to get an absentee ballot, they will take your name and address, and when they come in, they will mail one to you, so that no one will feel like they've been left out. And Mary Joyce wants to say something about that.
The Board of Elections has divided the town. We're going to have these maps located all over town, as well as have smaller versions, so everyone, maybe over here so Nate can get it on the camera, so that everyone will know where to vote. First off, when you're asked about being registered to vote, that means, are you a resident of 30 days, 18 years of age? Are you registered in, like, the presidential election? That's what we mean. You have to be a registered voter. You don't register just to vote for the library referendum. You are a registered voter in Irondequoit, age 18, a resident of 30 days. The town is divided. I wish I could say it was Kings Highway, but it's not quite that. We tried to keep it East Arundecoit School District and West Arundecoit School District. The only difference is 4 election districts when you look at the election districts in which you live, and those are the ones that are in 44, 40, 68, and 9, I think. But we are going to be letting residents know, and you'll know by the map that you have if you're in those particular EDs and need to vote one way or another, because the Board of Elections wanted to keep it pretty simple on where you would vote, and it was decided that the 2 school districts would be a good way to differentiate where you would vote. So we'll make sure that these maps are widely available and you know where to vote, especially if you're in those election districts. Okay?
So let's just reiterate that one more time. If you are a regular voter and a registered voter, you are all set. The only people who have to register are people who haven't registered already. And if you haven't, shame on you. Should all be registered and should all be voting. If the referendum passes, that will give us permission to bond for up to $13 million. Doesn't mean we go out the next day and borrow $13 million, but eventually a $13 million bond means this. $29 per year for the average homeowner who owns a $100,000 home, because 29 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. $2.42 a month. $29 a year. I learned from our former comptroller Bavenzi to say a large pizza and an order of wings. And I think the supervisor and our board treasurer have more to say about the borrowing process.
That's because I like to talk about money, and I think we have gone quite the distance in trying to keep taxes stable in this town, building fund balances, and reducing our debt issuance. And so what I want to address is that if the referendum were to pass, of course I am hoping on that, we don't go to the bond market November 1st and immediately be loaned $13 million at 3.8%. That's not how it works. For example, we refinanced some older debt in 2012, and we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest. When we did our CIP for this year, we went to the bond market, and we had gotten $2 million in bands. And those bands were at 0.65% interest rate. We're hoping we have those bands paid off within the next 2 years, so we don't roll those over. When we went to the bond market, we were able to garner a 2% interest on those. Bernanke has guaranteed that interest rates are not going to be raised until the unemployment rate in this country is below 6.7%. And even though the stock market scored well this week, until we see a leveling of the playing field in the S&P and know that the stock market has some of the losses that hurt the stock market in 2007, 2008, and 2009, we're pretty sure that this is the best time for us to be doing that. In terms of a CIP, that is an internal working document for us at Town Hall to evaluate the infrastructure in our town, every asset. It's a 6-year forecast. It's a planning tool. It is not cast in stone. We put items on that CIP so it's on our radar. It doesn't mean that that's going to be initiated in that particular year. That document changes every year based on priorities in this town. So that's just an internal working document that we use for planning purposes. We have built the fund balances so significantly in the last 3 years that we are able to stabilize that tax rate. We've kept it the same for 4 years in a row. That is something for the town of Arundecoit. 4 years in a row that tax rate has stayed the same. In terms of debt issuance, we went from 2011 to 2013 by reducing debt service rate per thousand by 10 cents. Yeah, that's pretty good. By 2014, we've reduced it another 6 cents, 16 cents. By the time this first ban would hit the 2015 budget, we have already reduced the debt issuance by 22 cents per thousand assessed valuation. So you can see we have been reducing the debt in this town, continuing to keep up with enhancing the infrastructure, but being very cognizant of what we do to make sure that every tax dollar is used wisely. Did Carol want to add some things that?
Not with this one, when we get to the
Okay,
next.
so when you see this figure, 29 cents per $1,000, a $13 million bond at 3.8, that's what we call a rough order of magnitude if we were going to the market for that full amount of money. There's no way we're doing that. This project will be developed through architects, engineers, and a construction company that will be on a construction plan, and we will go to that market as we need each of those funds. And they will be at bands. After 2 years, they're usually turned over into bonds. But during a band period, that interest rate is really low. So we know we're going to be able to handle the debt. We have not reached our maximum debt according to state law.
So there is a cost, even if we do nothing. We call it the cost of doing nothing. And that's because the library buildings currently need updating. I think earlier I said that the last time we did anything significant to the buildings, electric typewriters were high-tech office equipment. Well, that means we don't have enough electrical outlets and the electrical system's desperately needing upgrade. But let's just say that we did some more cosmetic improvements and maybe bought some new furniture instead of the 1963 furniture that we're using now. We estimate that would cost about $2.2 million, but it wouldn't add any space to the buildings. It would just make them a little nicer for the employees and for the public. If we wanted to do some longer-term improvements, because we knew we were going to stay in those buildings for a much longer term, we would still have to spend $6.1 million for those electrical upgrades, reasonable restrooms, upgrading so that we met the newer Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, and things like that. But still, no additional space, $6.1 million. So subtract that from the $13 million if you really want to think about the cost of a new library.
Can I add to this? Actually, oh, and Carol's probably going to add to it too. But one of the things that we as a board have struggled with is how to make our tax dollars stretched between two full-service branches. So we studied these options. There were a couple of other options we also had studied. One was tearing down the two branches and building new where they currently are. And that would give us the square footage space that we need, but it was estimated that that would cost close to $18 million. And that doesn't include any additional land that we would need to purchase in order to accommodate the bigger building, additional parking areas. It would also mean that each branch would be on 2 floors, so we would be staffing 2 full-service branches with even more staff than we currently have. And we'd still be facing with how do we stretch our tax dollars between 2 branches. We're not proud as a board that we have furniture in our buildings from 1960-something and that some of the desks that our staff works at is held together with duct tape. But we make difficult decisions every year when we're faced with the pot of money that we're given for our tax dollars. And how do we stretch that money and buy the books that the people need and pay the staff that so greatly services our town? So we made these decisions, and they're not easy decisions to make. So we feel that the central branch not only brings the town together on one campus, but it also will make our tax dollars that we spend each year on our operation budget more efficient, and it'll make our staff more efficient as well. And Carol's going to expand on that.
Well, I can talk. Can you hear me in the back? I'm used to projecting anyway.
But they need to pick you up on the TV, so talk in the microphone.
Okay. I can't reach this.
It's on, I think.
Okay, one of the other things when we're looking at that, besides the cost of the library, we originally wanted to have identical services at both branches. Because of the constraints in the budget, we now do not have identical services. So the residents have to drive between two branches at times to get their materials or have it delivered, which there are charges. We also have to throw out books as we get new ones because the space is so bad. Yet those books are still ones that individuals want. So they're asking for those to be delivered to our library, and it's costing the residents too to have that delivered. So all of these changes, and a few years ago, we had some books that were so popular, yet we could not buy them. We rented books, which is a terrible waste of money, just to have enough to meet the need of the individuals in our town who wanted those books. And there's going to be a lot of offsets with this. So if we flip to the next side, we look at the cost of the improvements. So the library improvement proposal, $29. Long-term improvements with $6 million is $22, and temporary repairs is $8. But the long-term improvements and the temporary repairs, you really can't see the little asterisks. That's over 15 years. So that wouldn't be extended as much. And at the end of that time period, I'm sure we will have to continue with those repairs. The cost of our roofs and maintaining them. So all of that with our regular operating budget, we're going to have things under warranty. So all of the new equipment, the new roofs, the new HVAC systems, and we look at that operating budget and say it's hard to totally forecast what that budget will be in a new building. However, we do know staff, we are not expanding staff. We will not be adding any personnel when we get into this new building. We will be using the employees that we have and using them more efficiently. The cost, if the building's larger, so the cost of heating should rise. However, we're looking for grants, green technology, so that the HVAC system we have will be more efficient, and there will be savings there. Insurance with a larger building, that will go up. However, our current libraries do not have fire suppression systems. I see the fire marshal back there, but the new one will. So that means our insurance will go down. There's also the cost of just consolidated services. Right now, we pay mileage for our staff to go back and forth between branches and here to Town Hall. We will share services, maintenance with the town. We will share the cost of dumpsters with the town. So all of those are shared services. The town, the IT person has to travel to both branches to do work. That is going to be all here on campus. So there's a lot of shared costs that we're going to have to be more efficient. No more 2 elevator maintenance contracts. No more 2 copier maintenance contracts. So all of that will be going into one shared. So savings on our regular operating budget besides. And I think I covered.
You did, Bill. Yeah.
Okay, and there are other ways that we can find money to help pay for this project. We have established a fundraising committee made up of members of the community and library trustees, and they are aggressively working on raising money to help defray the cost of this project. Grants are also available. The state of New York has library construction grants. It's possible we could get up to $1 million over the first 2 years of that project to help pay for the building. Currently, we are not eligible for those grants. We used to get them and to help pay for some of these repairs that we had to make. The new roofs on Evans and McGraw of a few years ago were 50% of those were paid for by state construction grants. We can't get that money anymore. They won't give it to us. They say our libraries are so inadequate that unless we build a new library, they won't give us grant money. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place in that situation. The way that evolved was that every year you have to file a report with the state library about the conditions and quality of your library, and if you don't meet standards, then you have to file for what they call a variance, so that you describe what the shortcomings of your library are. We filed for variances for every year that I've been here and many years before, and so eventually they said, enough, build a new library. And that's what we're trying to do. We do have two current library buildings, one of which can be sold to help raise money for this project. The McGraw branch on Ridge Road can be sold. Its current assessment is $1.1 million. Over the past few years, that building has been actively sought by people who want to use that land for commercial purposes. We cannot sell the building on Cooper Road. It was sold to that land was sold to the town of Arundequoit by the West Arundequoit School District for $1, I think in 1962. And there's a deed restriction that says that if we don't use it for a library or some other town purpose, that land and the building on it revert back to the school district. Okay, time for us to challenge you. Visit a library in a neighboring town. Go east, go west, go south. Don't go north. We don't care which one you visit, but visit at least one and look around. And then come back. And if you're not terribly familiar with our current library branches, call me. I will give you a tour, a personal guided tour of both the public and staff areas of the library. And then compare them, and you decide, can we do better? Should we do better? We think the answer to that question is yes. In addition to these meetings, and there's still 2 more left, we are working our tails off to provide you with the information that you need to make this decision. We have met with every community group that will have us, and we still have a few more that we are scheduled. We still have 2 more of these meetings. We have a website, we have a Twitter site, we have a Facebook page, and they all are based on Library Proposal. LibraryProposal.com, Twitter.com/LibraryProposal, Facebook.com/LibraryProposal. Check them out. Every scrap of information we generate in this project is there for you to review. If you have any questions about any of this, you can contact me or the members of the library board. The email addresses are right there. My phone number, 336-6064. That's the phone on my desk. I will answer it personally, or you'll get my voicemail and I'll get back to you. Now, each of you received a card where you can write a question, and we're going to have a question and answer session here with the library board. Judge Janier is going to and Mr. Bates are going to moderate that discussion. And if you would, before you leave, if you could fill out that survey about what you think about our presentation here tonight, that would be a big help as well. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Cards go to Mr. Bates.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Okay. Before we then, why don't we introduce the board? John, why don't you lead off?
John Perticone, Town Board, and I'm also the liaison between the Town Board and the Library Board.
Jack Herma, former owner of Harriman's Marketplace, still an employee, and very much enjoying this position here as a trustee.
Miriam Gans. I just started my second 5-year term as a library trustee.
I'm David Heffer. I'm currently the longest-serving member of the board. I started in January of the year 2000. I've been treasurer, secretary, vice president, and president twice, although I'm currently an at-large member.
Carol Mamano, treasurer of the board. I've been on the board since 2005.
I'm Stephanie Squiccerini. I'm the president of the library board, and in my day job, I'm the teen services librarian at the Fairport Public Library, and I'm also the founder and director of the Greater Rochester Teen Book Festival.
I'm Terry Buford. I'm the library director. I've been the library director here since 2004.
Okay, Mr. Bates, do you have some questions? All right.
First question, how will the senior citizens be served? I'll read the whole thing, and there are probably a few questions in here. How will the senior citizens be served? Are there any innovative ideas or plans to let our elderly citizens receive benefits and enjoyment from this addition to our town services? You did mention children and teens as special constituents. Once we talked about putting the senior center next to the library, question mark. So whichever question, hey.
We're very proud of the services that we offer seniors. I think we are a place that seniors like to come. We have a lot of programs that are of interest to them. We have a lot of materials and services that are aimed at people who maybe their vision isn't as great as it used to be, maybe their hearing isn't as great as it used to be. We talk about a children's center and a teen center because, quite frankly, there are times when we want them separated from the adults. I don't think we feel that way about seniors. And I think many seniors come to the library because we have that human element. You know, we remember your names. We remember your story. We chat you up. We become your friends. And, quite frankly, on a hot summer day, I think seniors come to the library, they relax in the air conditioning, they talk with their friends, the staff of the library, and the library truly becomes the community's living room and the community's center at times like that. So that's what I think about when I think about library services to seniors, not just materials that help people whose vision isn't great or whose hearing isn't great, but that human element that we all seek.
And we won't be replacing the services that Pine Grove so greatly does for our seniors. We see the library as being able to complement that. If there are programs that the senior center currently offers that could be larger, had they had more meeting room space or bigger meeting rooms, we can offer those in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department at the library. And seeing as I'm a teen services librarian, I feel like I have to speak to the teen question. There have been some comments that teens won't come to the library even if we build a space for them, and that's really not true. Teens often feel that they've been either lumped in with the children's department or they're lumped in with the adult department. There isn't a space just for them. They don't feel like they really belong. They may feel like there isn't a place for them. So if we do create a space for them, and libraries who do create dedicated spaces for teens where they feel welcome and they can be teens, they can be in that pack mentality. You don't usually see just one or two teens. They may travel together, work together, do group studies together. So if we create a space where they can do that, they will come. Then they will feel like they belong in their community library.
I just want to add one thing. One of our board members, Elaine Cole, is in Florida right now, and whatever town she lives in, they have a program that they call, I hope nobody takes offense, Geek Squad, Geezers, and Gizmos. And this is where they invite high school kids from those various clubs to come in and teach sessions to seniors like us who maybe aren't all that familiar with how to use an iPod. And one of our definite plans in the new library is that we would have a dedicated teaching space which would have computers in it and have docking stations. You know, I'm speaking a foreign language here. Docking stations for iPods and iPads and all those other things that I don't know how to use. And I think it would be a super combination for seniors and teens to be together and working on this. But I don't want it to be called geezers.
Bob?
Can we take a question in the audience?
Excuse me, we have a form.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Which
sir.
he's done.
Sorry,
You
Judge.
used to do it in grammar school to me.
No, I didn't.
Okay, the written question? Excuse me, ma'am.
But I have to write again. That's one thing you shouldn't ask seniors to do things like that. I can talk personally with some of you sometime.
After, yeah, that would
That'd
be
be
great.
great.
I think you addressed this. Is there any possible consideration to include a town senior center in the newly built library? I think you all addressed that. But there's a second part here. Would the town consider the Cooper Road branch as a senior citizen? A senior center, I'm sorry. Senior center.
We'll let the town board members answer.
We just put a lot of money into Pine Grove. And my vision is in this centralized library, we'll be able to extend our senior programming, capitalize on what we are already doing in Pine Grove. Government has to become smaller. We are living with a tax cap. We are paying exorbitant rates for health care and pension costs. Every salary has a 46% benefit attached to it. We have to consolidate. We have to reduce personnel. We need to be more centrally located. There are already issues with the Pauline Evans branch. Why would we turn that into something else that is just another liability and expense for the town? I even question how long the town should support two branches. I'll tell you, I chose to move here. I come from a much more rural area, far less populated, and I'll have to tell you that those farmers have some much broader libraries with more offerings. And it is time that this town unified and recognized it's one town, the town of Irondequoit, in which the north, the south, and the east and the west meet. We are as central as we can get here. I know it's tougher in the southeast and the northwest, but it is time. We have to look at the cost of the services we provide. Because what is happening, and I think the library board can attest to this, that the majority of their budget is going to pay for labor and benefits. When I first moved here, and I was still teaching, I would go, even though I lived over on the western side of town, I'd go up to Helen McGraw because I thought I had a little bit more space. But I guess they tell me it was just a psychological thing with me. And I supported the two-branch concept because I saw those branches as economic drivers for the town. Well, then I took early retirement and started working up in a law office on Ridge Road. And then I'm out to all the banks, and I'm going to all these closings, and I'm in all these other towns. And I'm starting to see Irondequoit residents in these other libraries, and I'm watching where they're going. And then I became town supervisor, and then I learned even more as residents started asking me, how come we don't have this in our library anymore? Why don't we have this? And then what they started telling me was not only were they leaving town to go to another library, they also were taking their dry cleaning. And they were having their lunch over there. And they were shopping over in that town, too. So another supervisor might give you a different answer, but I do think it would be illogical.
I have a quick question. Why don't you move to an empty shopping mall? I'm sorry, that was a question, and
We don't own it.
go with the answer. Would somebody like to give why we don't move to an empty shopping mall?
Well, go ahead, Dave.
We don't own the shopping mall. We happen to own the town hall campus. Any place that we put a library would come off the tax rolls. It just doesn't make sense to do that.
But the reverse that is also if McGraw is sold.
Right, that
That
comes
would
back
go
on the tax rolls.
and would be money generating for the town,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, Bob?
An albatross.
If I read this question, if I understand the question, this person wants to know, are we voting on the issue of the new library? And if approved, do we address the size of the library at a later date?
What this particular vote is this is just the first step in the process. This is, do the residents want to build a central library on the town hall campus at a cost of up to $13 million? That's this part of it. We fully intend as a library board to then, the next steps that come after that is we hire the architect after the request for proposal process is undertaken. We interview the architects, and we decide on that final architect. And then we want the residents to be a part of that process. We want the residents to come in and talk with the final architect that we do select, what they see they need in a library, what they want in the library. And then based on all of that, they will design the space that we can afford, given as many of the priorities that the residents have given to us. We'll also work with the staff because they see how the operations work and how to serve all of those needs. And then we come up with the final design. The final design very well may not look like either of the concepts we currently have. Those are just concepts to give people kind of a visual impression of what is possible on the town hall campus and what's possible in the facility. And it may not be the size that we're currently envisioning, because based on how creative architects can get and based on the community feedback, if it's decided that we don't need the number of meeting room spaces that we were originally envisioning because there's space elsewhere that's now being planned, then we can scale back. So the community residents will have input on that final design and the final overall square footage. Does that answer the question? It is kind of a complicated.
Do many high school students use the libraries today because they are close to the two high schools? Will they still come if the new library is farther away?
Great question. This morning, a few of the trustees and Mr. Perdicone and I visited the Eastridge High School and spoke to 3 senior classes of government and economics students. And we had a discussion on that exact topic. Currently, the libraries may be near schools. The problem is we cannot accommodate them when they get out of school. If all the students who hang out in front of the Cooper Dell decided to come to the Evans Branch Library instead, the building would probably fall down. We just don't have the facility that we need to serve those people. Much as we would like to, we could not do it. So when we discussed this with the students, that was one of their questions. I'd have to go farther to get to this new library. And there are solutions to that. The schools would add the library to the end of some of their bus runs. Students would know which ones those are. If they wanted to go to the library, they would take that bus and end up at the library. There are ways to get around this, but location is not everything. Location doesn't really work for you if your building isn't big enough to accommodate the people who want to use it.
I think to go along with that, there's always been the standard question, both school districts have large libraries. Why can't the population, whose tax dollars also built into that, use those?
The missions of a public library and a school library are very different. School libraries, obviously, they're in the business of supporting the curriculum, and that's their main focus. The public library, there's things that public library users want and need that they're not going to find in a, in a school library. You're not going to find small engine repair manuals in a school library. You may not find the latest cookbook, the latest Diet Craze cookbook in your school library. So there's definitely different missions. We don't replace each other. We complement each other. We collaborate with each other. We support each other. And it just makes for a richer experience for our students and a richer experience for our community when we have that kind of collaboration and support for each other.
If this plan goes through, is it true that we will have more library space than any other town?
Library space.
Library itself?
The library space itself, no. Total square footage in the library building, yes, we would, possibly. The other, some people have commented on the square footage of the Greece Library, for instance. Their population is slightly less than double ours, and their square footage of their library is 38,000 square feet. But as Terry mentioned, they also on that same campus, they have a community center. I believe they also have a senior center on that. So they have multiple community gathering places in that same area, whereas right now we don't have as much of that space, and we do see a need based on community feedback and residential feedback. The library itself, back to Greece, actually, when they originally built their building, one of the things that often gets cut from library designs is that meeting room space. We do hear that a lot. Greece actually, and often libraries regret the decision to cut that meeting room space in hindsight. And Greece actually went through that same regret. They built their library over 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. They've had two major renovations since then, and one of their most recent major renovations was to build back in meeting room space. And that is with having a community center on their campus and a senior center. They still felt the need that they needed additional meeting room space. So the overall plan, the one concept that we do have, the Barkstrom and LaCroix concept, has the library proper space for the library collections and the staff is about 33 or 34,000 square feet, give or take. The rest are flexible meeting room space that would be used by the library for library programming and outside groups for various different types of programs. The 2005 study that we did with the Thomas Group, we also hired a library consultant, PANS, a library consulting firm. And they got very specific with the types of square footage needs that we would need in a single library facility based on the way that our branches are currently used, our population, the evolution of library services and library buildings. And that study determined that we needed an estimated library space of 50,700 square feet. So the building that we are proposing is very similar in size to that original space, only with the additional making the meeting room space a lot more flexible, taking into account that we maybe don't need as much space for our physical collections, but we still need space for that community gathering space. Did I cover everything?
Yes.
I'm going to stop talking now.
Three concerns in this question. Will there be additional RTS bus service to the library? Will there be bicycle racks at the new library? And will there be any beverage services?
Beverage services, yes. We definitely plan on having a leasing space to a commercial vendor for bagels, coffee, sandwiches, whatever, and that the rental income will offset our operating income. I can't imagine having a library without bicycle racks, simply because I expect children, adults, families riding to the library. As far as RTS service, we haven't explored that yet, but I do know from when I've been in my work life, when we've built new facilities, and I've been in the Health and Human Service area, we have talked to RTS on where bus stops were located on all of that. That has not been something we've explored at this point, but that's a great question, and it's something that we will look into.
Well, first it'd have to pass in order to explore the point.
Right.
Okay, then.
Right.
And we're more than happy to explore the point. Okay.
Multiple questions again. Will there be a connection to the town hall? Is there an ongoing commitment of the town board to this project? And what other grants are there than county and state are available, evidently?
Mary Joyce, do you want to, or John, do you want to?
I could speak on behalf of the town board. There is a solid commitment to this project from the town board. We've been, I'm on the liaison, and I have brought things to the town board going forward, the recommendation we got, and, I can't say much more than there is a solid, definitely, that people are all on board with this project to move it forward. One other thing I just want to talk about that we usually ask, that Stephanie talked about, is the RFP that goes out for design, and people ask this question quite a bit. Once you get the design, it goes out to RFP. Best case scenario, we're looking at probably maybe next spring at this time to break ground. What we have over there is almost a shovel-ready, parcel there for to start building on. And I think the project would probably take 9 to 12 months from beginning to end to get done. And why I'm bringing up this point is we're still about 2 years away from where we are now. So we're a couple years away, and the facilities we still have to keep them going for the next couple of years the way they are. And I think at that time, people will be ready to move into a new facility.
Yeah, I believe part of that question, will there be a direct connecting, was that right, Bob, between the town hall and the library?
Yes, I think it was.
In the Barkstrom and LaCroix concept, there is a direct connection. There's kind of a courtyard that connects, but that particular concept does eliminate the potential for the parking lot and exit and entrance that the Passero concept had. So that's something that we would have to weigh the pros and cons of having that connection versus the additional parking spaces. From the feedback we've received through these public information forums, we believe that the parking issues and the extra parking spots are probably a higher priority than having a direct connection between the two buildings. The other question was about grants. When we evaluate the architects and the results from the submissions from the RFP, we'll have a grading scale that we have used in the past too. Different things like their past history with building libraries, their past history with working with community members and discussions about what the building should look like. And a big one will be the success rate of securing grants. There's a lot of different, lead technology, is that the phrase, I'm using that correctly? Technology grants, what their success rate is in securing those types of grants for construction projects. So in addition to the MCLS construction grants that are out there, there's green technology grants. There are often grants out there to incorporate technologies for individuals with special needs, making sure that we have those types of technologies that make the library use easier for them, and a better library experience. So there are a wide variety of technologies. One question that we had gotten in the past is, has the board toured other library facilities? And one that many of us have been to is there's a library in Clifton Park. It's the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. And interestingly enough, that's a library that actually joined two towns. And they share library services. Two different towns share library services there. And that's kind of become the model for what libraries can be as far as green technology. That building is 100% green. There's carpets and flooring that's made out of recycled materials. We had a student today that talked about natural light. She wanted to make sure that the library building had natural light. And one thing that building incorporated was they have a whole wall of windows in their reading area. And it's incorporated with it shades. When the temperature and the sunlight is directly on it, it automatically shades. So it helps the energy efficiency inside the building. So there's a lot of different grants for that kind of thing too. So we have been exploring other library branches and seeing what the best practices are, and that's, I've probably talked enough. Go ahead. Yes.
Some people in town are asking, what's the rush to build this library all of a sudden? Will you address this?
It's the rush that's taken us 20-something years to get to. Yeah, it's not really been a rush. We've studied this. Terry had talked about in the presentation all the different studies. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars on these studies, focus groups, consultants. We've weighed the options. We've looked at them very closely. We during regular board meetings, special board meetings that we've had, discussions, it's time to stop spending money planning for it. We now need to actually do it.
And I just want to remind you that in 1948, they had a plan to put a library on this campus. So what is that, 65 years ago? I don't think that's a rush.
And the concept of having the library on the town hall campus is something that has been ongoing. It's been conceptualized in the past. Somebody, I think, handed us, it's in the master plan, thank you, the current master plan that's been under review. So it's a concept that has been, it's changed as far as where on the town hall campus is based on different possibilities if we could move certain things around. So it's been a concept that has been around for many, many years.
I also think, and just to reiterate what you're saying, the Evans branch is a catastrophe waiting to happen. That building's how many years old? Mm-hmm. The structure of it has to be questionable. And the amount of money, even the state won't give you money to upgrade it. So it might be a rush job, and I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm sorry I'm going to say this, but I wouldn't be surprised if something falls in that building, whether it's the roof or the side of the wall or something like that. That's an old building. Bob?
This is a comment and a question, and I think you've already answered the question, but I'll do it anyway. As a fairly new resident, I am appalled by our libraries. The library was a central and vital location where I grew up. Arundequite needs to grow and improve. If I-Square shows were open for business, this will prove the town's commitment to its residents. So stop opposing productive growth. And the question, what will our current facilities look like in the future if we don't do this?
Distressed.
Well,
How do I answer?
if we don't do it, they will look basically the same as they do now. We might have some new paint and hopefully some new furniture and hopefully some new restrooms and things like that. But the buildings will basically look the same if we don't do anything.
Well, the other question is, can this town justify putting money into that building and all that? And we're talking strictly about the Evans, okay? And if the possibility does exist, I'm not on the board, I can ask these questions. If the possibility does exist, that might be closed permanently. If you look at the physical structure, I'm still surprised it's open. Is there somebody that can answer that?
If the response to the referendum is a no, the board will be faced with even more difficult decisions. One of those options, quite realistically, needs to be closing one branch and just putting the resources that we do have into a single branch. And right now, that single branch is the one that we own that has the most room for potential as far as growth would be the McGraw branch. It's not a decision that we look forward to having to make.
And we had looked at a few years ago, looking at could we use McGraw just as the only facility? And it really wasn't possible in the way that it's configured now at all. And if we had to construct around it, we would also have to buy land. So we're still looking at a large cost to have one facility. But that one facility could not serve, the way it is now, could not serve the entire population, the entire town.
Thank you. Bob?
This is cute. I'm five. I'm five, and I want my library because it's going to be the best library ever.
I think she laughed, I saw her.
Yeah. She probably had to get to bed.
Is there an exact number of the operational cost savings? And any idea how much revenue can be generated from commercial renting?
Do you want to answer that?
The actual cost savings, we know how much we will save specifically on duplication of current maintenance contracts, and items like that. Those are known savings. We have to look at that as offsets as to what else we're going to have within that library. Also, as far as all the cost sharing that we would do with the town, we can't nail down the exact amount until we see how much we are actually sharing with the town. So those two pieces are going to be cost savings that will happen. Maintenance. Just looking at the maintenance, the $8,700 that we did not budget for this year, when we're getting regular maintenance because of equipment failures, roofs leaking, that we're doing everything we can, all of that is going to be under warranty. So the plugs, having to go and add extra plugs and things like that, all of that's going to be built in. All of that will be exact savings right from there.
And in addition to the savings and the shared services, another way to look at it is that we'll be using our tax dollars more efficiently, and we'll be able to get more out of what we have because we won't be duplicating. We'll be able to have more rich collections because we won't be discarding books just because we don't have space for them. We'll be able to have staff that will be able to be specialized maybe in different things than they are right now and be able to free up their time on things that they're duplicating in each branch and be able to offer more diverse services. And when Carol talks about things being under warranty, that saves some things while they're under warranty, so that money that we normally would have been spending on upkeep and maintenance, we can now use for other things or to build up our emergency funds so that if things unexpected do happen, we have an emergency fund there to be able to pull from.
And we're under budget limits also. So we are given money from the town. We have to go through a full budget process. We're held to caps. We're held to not being able to, we can't just put in any budget that we want and have it approved. So we're still under.
We can try.
We try. Like anybody can try. So that is one of the points of us as a board, is really looking at our fiduciary responsibilities and spending the dollars wisely.
The other part of that question was the leasing revenue. That we don't know because we don't know how much square footage that space might be allocated, what the going rate is at the time that we're able to build, who the vendor might be. So those are all considerations, and we'll obviously seek counsel on what we need to charge for this lease. We won't just make a number up. We'll make sure we have all of the details with the town attorneys and real estate agents, and we'll make sure we're getting the maximum dollar for that space.
And I just want to remind you of what was said before. Right now, we have to pay our staff travel when they go between the buildings, and they go between the buildings a lot. And okay, I don't exactly know how much they get a mile, but the other thing that happens is
58.5 cents per mile.
Okay, there you are. But the other thing that happens is when our staff gets in the car and drives over here, we're still paying them X, whatever they and all they're doing is driving. So if we're in one building, our staff is going to be paid X for being in the building and giving us library services, not driving a car. So, I mean, it's there's like no real way to make that concrete. But if you think about it for a minute, it's really illogical, and it really is a waste of your tax dollars. These highly professional people are being paid to drive back across town, back and forth.
A couple of other points here. we're one of the few libraries in the county that's not open on Sunday. I drove past the Grease Library this past Sunday. There had to be 75 cars in their parking lot. I think we do have to talk about the fact that what we'd really like to do is deliver more service for the same amount of money that we're spending now. As far as the leased space for revenue-producing operations, those are difficult questions to answer because we can't compel anyone to take that deal. We're consulting with the libraries that have successful food service operations and other revenue-producing operations now, but I will tell you, some libraries, those operations have failed. So we want to do it the right way, and we want to come up with a solid citizen that will be there for many years, and that comes with time and with study. The Pittsford Library has a terrific operation going. The Central Library now has a terrific vendor in place, and it is possible, but it'll take some time and some work.
The proposed cost for square footage seems very high based on national averages. Can you comment on this?
I'll say one thing, and that is, in the past few months, I've had people tell me it's way too high, and I've had people tell me it's way too low.
John, you have a comment?
You know, yeah, being, in some development and construction, that it's all based on how big you want the library. It's based on cost per square footage. Ballparks roughly right now, probably the cost is probably between $200 and $250 a square foot. That's turnkey move-in. That's construction costs. Some of it, will include some of the fixtures and furniture, but on the LaCroix design, we had a local contractor give us a proposal on the cost of that building. I think I did the math. It came to about $218 to $220 a square foot. So it's all based on square foot, and that'll go, the longer this goes on too, you got to add probably 3 to 4% probably every year on the cost of that. As you obviously don't do stand still and move forward, but you got to add about 3%, 3 to 4% on that. But I would say square footage wise, you can go between $200 and $250 a square foot. That's a building like this. That's a typical building like this. And I just want to make one comment on people talk about costs and everything like that. I've worked and I've been in the mechanical business my whole life. I've gone through a lot of different mechanical systems that you can put in this building. There's all kinds to put in there because people have asked me, well, what's the cost of utility bills? And, there's a formula there, and it's all going to depend on the system that you put in that building, whereas you can get the cost of how much the utility bill is going to be, and that's including electrical, HVAC. So when they talk about green, there isn't a building that's going up right now that nobody's researching every possible avenue, every grant that's available. I was involved in the building downtown, the new crime lab. That's all green. And people are putting gardens on the roof. But the point I'm trying to make is there's not a stone unturned there that you're going to get a designer out there that's not going to be involved in getting to this point where they're going to not have a stone unturned. And just one quick comment. The designers that we have in town, the construction managers that we have in this town, I can probably off the top of my head probably know who most of them will be bidding this job. I don't think we can go wrong in this community. We got some of the top-notch designing firms and construction managers that will work with the town, work with the library board, and make the best efficient building that we can have at the best cost.
I just want to add one thing because it was kind of new to me when in talking about this, but the cost in a library is the weight bearing for the books. So the cost, which is another reason we want to look at one floor of service, because of if we had library services on 2 floors, not only is it more costly because of staffing, but it's also more costly if we have to have books on a 2nd floor because of the weight on that.
To get back to the elderly comment, there may be grants available if you offer certain programs to seniors. And I guess the question is, are you aware of any, or are there any?
Yes, there are, and I think even the community development block grant that the town qualifies for. So if there are services that we provide to certain populations, yes, there are those types of grants too, and we'll be looking at those.
I think this is more comment. 2 polling places is woefully inadequate for a town with the voting numbers of 25,000. We need more polling venues. Controlling input by requiring people to write questions is restrictive. You need to allow real public input by letting people speak and ask their questions themselves directly. And then the third comment, the quote shown from the Arundequite Post was misleading. In the Arundequite Library and all its members, they do a fantastic job. And there was no question there other than these comments.
Well, I think the form of this was an informational session. So it was to get the information out to people and let them write questions, or let them write questions for their input. Too often when we have informational sessions, we have people that take over and get out exactly what they want to say, okay? It's an informational session, you write the questions, and we answer them. Too often we looked in the paper, and I've been looking at the Arundequite Press, and evidently nobody's been to a meeting who's written those letters, all right? Because all those questions are answered. So I think when you want to expound on it, when you want to talk about it later, if just a referendum is passed, we're here to give you information, not receive other people's ideas regarding what they should think on lawn chairs and where they should think the library goes and all the rest of it. It's an informational session. Is that correct? Just say yes.
Yes, and the other reason why we wanted to use the comment cards and the question cards was so that we can incorporate those questions more accurately in our frequently asked questions document. We make sure we update that document quite regularly. There's a lot of information in there. It's currently, I think, 11 pages long, so there's a ton of information in those questions. So we keep these comment cards and make sure that when we're updating those frequently asked questions, we have those questions as accurately transmitted as possible. I think I'm going to let John and Mary Joyce speak to the voting issues. We have researched the polling places.
I have to ask a direct question, okay? Who picks the polling places?
Well,
Who picks the voting places?
for this particular, I think it was the library that we talked about where it would be. I think just what we wanted to, with the board, and I think I could speak for everyone, is, first of all, you want to simplify it as simple as you can have it. In dividing the town into just school districts, whatever school district you belong to, that's the certain site that you go and vote to simplify it, because we don't want to have polling places all over town. We had talked to the fire districts. It's simplified that way, and it's much easier. The polls are open 12 hours, those both days. I mean, we even talked about, like, if you do a primary, they're probably open like 9 hours. So they wanted to even expand the hours. So you got 12 hours at each polling site. I think that, you talk about a general election. Our past general election, we had a lot of voters. They're probably looking, 10, 12, 15% voting. We looked at the 2 sites. We were at the Eastridge High School today. We talked to the chief. If there was going to be any kind of traffic issues, they'll be out there directing traffic if we get to that point. But accessibility is going to be a lot easier in and out. I just voted in the West Arundequite School vote there a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this is just a yes and no vote. So by the time you leave your car, vote, and come back, it's not a lot of time. So people are going to be, there's going to be a lot of turnover there. And just to reiterate a little bit, it was just simplify it. Just have 2 polling places, and the school district that you belong to is where you go and vote.
I feel like we are responding to studies that we did about the last time there was a referendum vote. We met with the town clerk. We reviewed the situation from the last referendum vote. I think it was 2009. It was here at the town hall. The police chief and the town clerk both described it as, a bad situation with a terrible crowding and long lines. So we said, okay, we're not going to do that. We need to have more than 1 polling place. But if you think about how elections work, you are limited to either one, in this town, you're limited to either one polling place, two polling places, or you have to use every polling place that's used in a general election. There really aren't any other realistic options. And if you use every polling place that's used in a general election, you're talking about a massive cost to the town. So we felt like we were addressing the situation that cropped up in 2009 by selecting two polling places. The school district division works because the Board of Elections can easily produce those two lists for us, preventing any kind of duplicate voting or anything like that. Once you go beyond two, you come up with a confusing situation because no one's ever voted like that before. So all the polling places would be different for many people, and it would be extremely expensive. So we feel like we addressed that situation by going to two after the problems that were had with the one polling place. Met with the police chief, met with the town clerk, reviewed the situation, and we feel like this was our best option. Could it be crowded? Possibly, but we really feel like this was the best option of the limited choices we had.
Bob, do you have any other questions? I know there's a question that came up, and I don't mean to throw you a curve, but basically they tell you the town center and Mary Joyce is going to be over on Titus and Cooper Road. Why can't the library stay there? Is there something that we can address or answer that question?
Well, we can't get bigger there. The problem with staying at the site on Cooper Road is that the town only owns the tiny strip of land that goes right around that building, which includes maybe like 20 parking spaces. The vast majority of those parking spaces there are controlled by the church and by the bank. We share that with them, but as development increases there, those parking spaces are going to be more and more competition for them. The church has a new plan to rework how their entrance and parking work that will reconfigure that parking lot pretty dramatically. I don't know when they plan on doing that, but we consulted with a structural engineer about adding a second floor to that building. They recommended against it. So we really feel like we're up against the wall in terms of getting larger in that location, especially as commerce and traffic will increase.
Can I just say one thing, Joe? And Titus and Cooper is not the town center of the town of Arundequoit. I-Square is a super concept, and you know, most of us are rooting for it, but it's just one little commercial district in the whole town. Here's the center of the town, and I think that your library, if it's at all possible, if you can have that luxury, should be in the center of your town, not in just one particular commercial district.
Okay, would we like to make some final comments?
Joe, I'd just like to make one comment to the forum. In this town, we presently have the best of recreational and educational facilities. The only thing we lack to make this probably the greatest town in the county is a community library. Time to happen.
John, would you like to say anything?
Just one real quick comment, and I didn't comment when they talked about the referendum, and real quick that what the board decision they made right out of the get-go was the town board could have went and borrowed the money, but the library board wanted to have this referendum and have the folks in town to make the decision on if they would approve the plan that they've been brought forth to you people this evening, and to the whole town as well.
Mary Joyce?
One of the things that always concerns me is the image of Arundequoit to those who do not live in Arundequoit. You know, every time I hear the Medley Center, I have to chuckle because no matter where I go, the Medley Center is always a laughing matter. It's a chuckle. And we hope that advances for the region and for our community. But we have to think about our town and think about our intellect and all our culture. I see Arundequoit as being different from any other town. You can't compare us to the other towns. We are a bedroom community. I see us as being very well educated. We're not industrial, commercial. We really deserve something better in this town. And this consolidated library is what we need. It will increase our property values. We need to think about that. We have been stuck in a time warp. We need to get out of the 80s. Interestingly, the Rochester Magazine today has this quote talking about libraries unbound. Libraries in the 21st century will be spaces of convergence and connection, says Marianne Mavernick, the newly installed Niley Dean of River Campus Libraries, as she begins to map out a strategy for the River Campus at the University of Rochester. There needs to be a flow of knowledge and information as all of this is changing more rapidly than how we breathe. This is important to the future of our town. We've been saving for this. I would say every town administration going back at least 15 years has been trying to consolidate the library branches. This is not a new concept. We need to think efficiently. We need to think of the best interests of the town, that this is something we deserve. It will drive our property values. It will keep our commerce in our town, where it's important to recognize the importance of that sales tax base to support our services. This is a good thing, and it's time that we come together to be the town of Irondequoit, one community that comes to the town hall. I can see this on Thursday. St. Anne's is coming with their bus. They're coming earlier because they're coming to the centralized library, and then they're going over to the farmer's market, and then they have their chairs ready for the gazebo series. And I see that. I envision that, because what other town has the town campus that we have with the historic facilities, everything right here to bring our community together? This is our community center.
Any comment, Marianne?
How do you top that?
No comments?
Yes, just one more to our great supervisor, Mary Joyce. She said it, this is our last best chance to do this project, complete this project with very, very favorable bonding rates.
I do have some closing remarks. I know,
There's a
surprise.
There's a surprise.
But you'll be happy to know that someone edited me down from 2 pages to 1 page. But I just want to summarize. And one other thing that actually we didn't touch on when we were talking about revenue producing, a lot of the meeting room spaces and the flexible space that we're planning on would be revenue producing also. So I wanted to make sure that was out there. So I want to thank everybody for coming and being engaged in these processes. As you've heard, this proposal has come after many, many years of discussions and studies. But these public forums continue to provide us with valuable input and allow us to answer any questions that you might have. This proposal and the vote on it are just the first steps in the process. The community will be involved in every step along the way, and the needs and design will be evaluated throughout the process. If the referendum passes, we'll immediately send out RFPs to architects, and from the selection of the architect to the creation of the final design, there will be an open and transparent process with community input. If adjustments are needed to the size and scope of the facility we currently envision, we will make those changes based on the community discussions held with the architect. Flexibility and adaptability are vital elements to the design. We don't want to build something that will be inadequate the minute it is done being built. Communities in the past who have cut meeting room spaces often regretted it, with Greece, as I mentioned, just recently doing another renovation to add additional meeting room space. Money will be spent in a fiscally responsible way that gets us the best result to meet our needs. Just because the voters approved borrowing up to $13 million doesn't mean we have to spend it all. That's right. And we don't need to borrow all the money, and we certainly don't need to borrow it all at once. Fundraising and grants will offset as much of the cost as possible. There are 2 more public information forums scheduled on March 26th and April 10th. We hope that you and your neighbors will attend these so we have the opportunity to share this proposal and hear from everyone. If you have any additional questions or need clarification on anything we've discussed, please do not hesitate to ask. You can contact us at phone and email, or visit libraryproposal.com website to learn more. And we encourage you to share the information that you've learned here with your neighbors and friends, so you know that they're getting the most current and accurate information. I want to thank the Friends of the Irondequoit Library for their support tonight and their help, and to Joe Janier and Bob Bates for their assistance as well. And thank you all again for being a part of the discussion.
Terry, do you have anything else you want to say?
We will be conducting one final definitive survey on April 23rd. Please vote.
There's one more.
Okay, one more thing. One more thing.
thing.
Don't go away yet, folks.
If you are thinking of questions after you, and you kept your card, you could drop those off at either branch, or you could drop them in the mail, and you will get a response. If you put your name on there, phone number, email, we will respond directly to you.
Okay, one more thing. All right, and you might think I'm rude because I have an empty cup of coffee up here. The cost for you is 1 cup of coffee a month. That's exactly what it is, a little over $2. All right? Still $2 at the Cooperdale. That was a commercial. The other thing you got to point, yeah, the taxes, you like to see your taxes in work. You see them on the walkway on the lake. You see them at the ball field up there in Empire and Winton. Okay, I'm an old geezer, and I would like to see the library before the time passes, and it is the time to do. Remember, go and vote and support this, please.
Before you pass.
Yes. Thank you for being here tonight.